Hi, and welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name is Andrew, and today is going to be another music theory breakdown. Today's song is going to be the hit by Future, produced by Metro Boomin, Mask Off. Let's go ahead into our logic session. Cool. So here we are in my recreation of this track. I always say this, but I basically don't play the original audio in most of these videos at the attempt of being able to keep these online so you can keep learning from them, since I do not obviously have any rights to the original song. So if you're not familiar or you haven't heard this beat in a while, I would suggest first pausing this and going to listen to Mask Off by Future. Before I play this, I just want to touch on a couple things. So I basically charted all of these instruments into MIDI. I did a quick mix and I chose instruments that were super similar sounds to what we had. But then I guess I should have done this originally. Basically, at the end of the track, you can hear the sample. So I wanted to figure out what song that was sampling. So just on a side note, if you're not familiar, there's a website called Who Sampled. I looked up this beat, and it turns out that this song samples Prison Song by Carlton Williams. So when I was recreating this, it was somewhat difficult because there's a lot of human touch to the playing. So at first I was thinking this was like live tracked in, but it turns out it has the sample. But I did basically chart all of that in. So I'm not using any sampling. I'm literally doing it in MIDI. Let's go ahead and listen to the instrumental. Here it is. Here come those 808s. Cool, I'm going to stop it there. So let's get after it. So let's talk about some music theory. This song is in the key of D minor. D minor has only one accidental, in other words, one black key. That black key is B flat. The notes then are D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. That sounds like this. Cool. And then the chords that we use in the song, we use the one chord. Again, if you haven't seen this before, you're not familiar with music theory, most chords in a song that's really sticks to one key, which is like most things that you probably like to listen to unless you like really obscure music. And so essentially every note from the chords and every note from the melody that we hear in the song comes from our D natural minor, so not that leading tone. The chords we need are the one chord that has D, F, and A. That's a D minor chord. The sixth chord, that's a B flat major. We've got B flat, D, and F. Finally, this is an interesting one. We just have a third two notes. We've got E and G. So essentially, we could think about that as like two different chords. It's either a major 7 if we were to think of the C note added to it, or if the B flat's up there, it's an E diminished chord. But again, we don't need to use full like 3-note chords, so that's what this song does. We just get E and G. The G happens to be in the bass, and then finally we come back to the one chord. That sounds like this, although the rhythm is different in the song. We'll talk about that in a second. Perhaps you can hear some of this Mask Off beat. Cool. So let's talk about this. So obviously, the song Mask Off is beneath this. My version is much shorter. That's because I'm not using vocals, and the instrumental is basically repeating. We have two different sections here. We have like the introduction, which is this stuff, and then we have the main section with the 808 getting added. Let's see, what should we start with? Let's talk about our drums. I'm using the Logic's Techno 808. Sounds somewhat close to it. the introduction of the drums, we just get the kick drum. It's doing a whole note on the 1 and then 2 half notes, and that's repeating. Let's watch that. Cool. Let's look at the next section of the drums. The kick pattern totally changes. So this is the kick down here. We basically get what looks to be like a 2-measure pattern. So we get the kick on the first quarter note, the fourth quarter note, and the second quarter note of the following measure, and then that repeats. Our cymbals are going on steady 8th notes, subtle swing in there, and then we have a halftime clap, so the clap on every beat 3, and then finally we have this fill snare, which is happening basically in fill spots, so in between stuff. So let's watch that. Nice. So that secondary snare really gives it some more like swing to it, or some more movement. Super cool in the style. Nice. So that covers our drums. Let's go ahead and look at the stuff that's happening in the organ. So there's basically kind of an organ sound and a flute sound. So the organ is starting on our 1 chord. We're just using 2 of the notes, D and F. Then we go G, A, B flat. That's like 4, 5, 6 from our chord. This B flat and F, that's 2 of the 3 notes from the chord. So of the B flat major, this is a B flat, basically 5th interval. Then we drop down to G and E. That was the chord I mentioned where we really only have 2 notes, and they're a third, so they're close together. So again, it could be 2 different chords. After that, we get 3, 2, 1, F, E, D, back down, and that pattern essentially repeats. Now this section stays the same, but the flute actually changes between the intro and the main verse sections. So let's look at the flute. All right, the flute melody is going D, G, A, B flat, F, E, and then back to D. So there's a lot of overlap between the flute and the organ. That's super common. It's almost like they're 2 musicians listening to each other. And like we talked about in the beginning, this record is relying on a sample. And in the sample, the year that Prison song came out, I think it's 1976, predates the use of computers with regards to music recording and making. So that was definitely live people. Cool. So let's play this so you can watch it. Cool. So I talked about the melody. Now, if you see this line below, this is super important. This is like probably the most important thing past getting the notes right, to making this sound like the record. Now, regardless of if we had the correct notes, if we're just making our own beat, this is what makes this sound less like a MIDI controlled instrument and more like a human element. Now, if I wanted to make that even more humanized, I could literally humanize the MIDI, or I could automatically do that, like change the velocities. I could move some of these slightly out of time. But again, this is enough for us to see the theory. So down here, this is the pitch bend automation. So this is how you can create vibrato, which is basically when a note goes up and down really quickly. Technically, vibrato is supposed to sort of like center around the main pitch. However, as a guitar player, which if you've seen my videos, you know I play a lot of guitar. Guitar vibrato is really going from the note and above, as my one of my professors told me, just as clarification. Cool. So what you can do in Logic is you can hold a command down, or your Apple key, and you can basically just drag along and just start drawing like this. And the whole idea is that it's not perfect. It's not following a pattern that's going to make it sound more human. Now, at the end of these notes, we hear the flute kind of doing that. Duh. That's the vibrato sound. So let's hear this. So you can hear some of the movement there, and again, that goes a really long way to making the sound more like it's a real person playing. Vibrato is something that many different kinds of instruments add naturally. With regards to wind instruments, we're using our lungs. I don't play wind instruments, but people that do are using their diaphragm and their lungs to push out air. Right, so I believe to hold a note really long, just like a singer, if you think of opera, where there's like no mics and they're singing as loud as possible and holding notes, that's where we get the huge vibrato sound. So nice, let's go into our verse flute section. Again, our verse flute is slightly different. It's a lot more developed. It has some of the similar ideas, but it's going to be a 4-bar phrase, and that basically repeats throughout every verse of the song. The notes are going D, G, A, B flat. That was the same from the organ. We can then get this F, F, G. That's like 3, 4 from the chord. We go G, F sharp, E, D. This is a really interesting one because essentially this F sharp right here is out of key. However, it works basically referencing D major. It also feels out of key, so that gives us a lot of dissonance, which is super cool. And then finally we come back down to A. That's the 5 of it. And then we go up to 7, 1. Gracie, it's okay. Sorry, my dog's having a little sneeze attack like terriers do. Gracie, stop it. Cool. It's funny. It's like reversed sneezing, I think, for terriers. Anyway, sorry to digress. Let's hear this. One more time. Nice. Cool. So let's listen to this again from the beginning. I'm going to get up and help my dog out. Here we go. Here it is from the beginning. Nice. Final instrument, almost forgot. We've got our 808. So I'm using a cymatic sample from Bangin' 808 that I then loaded into the EXS24. See some of my other videos. I've talked about how to use that sampler if you are a Logic Pro producer like myself. So let's look at the bass line. We're basically following that same harmony. So we're using those the low notes of the 3 chords I showed you. We got the D, the B flat, and then that G, essentially, which is kind of like the 3rd from that chord. Doesn't matter. Anyway, back to D. Let's see that 808. Now, one thing that's super common is where these happen rhythmically are perfectly in line with the kick drums. So every kick drum pattern we have, these notes fall exactly with them. So one thing you want to be careful from a mix standpoint when you're doing that, this is super common in like modern trap music or hip hop stuff where the bass is carrying, or the 808 is really like a pitched kick drum. So on my drum kit, I'm filtering or cutting off everything below 79 hertz. That helps to let this low end of the 808 cut through. And we really don't want multiple low end sources at one moment in a song because we'll run into phasing issues and all sorts of other problems there. Cool, so let's play this and hear it. Watch. One more time. Nice. Pretty simple. Works really well. Yeah, so that basically covers everything in this track. Again, Metro Boomin, when he made this beat, obviously sampled that song, Prison Song. Now, that is a really great way of making a beat. See my sampling 101 if you're curious about how to take an old record and do that. One of the downsides with that is just clearing it, especially if you're an independent artist. So Future and Metro Boomin had plenty of resources to clear that sample. But again, you can use a lot of old songs as influence or references on getting that human touch or a certain phrasing. So hopefully this was helpful. I'll play this whole beat one more time and then we'll call it a day. I'm going to stop it there. I really hope this was helpful for you to better understand some music theory. If you're a fan of that track, or if you're not, hopefully this showed you how we can define a song as being in a key, where the notes come from. And again, I'm glad we got to talk about automated vibrato or writing in pitch bend automation. Once again, my name's Andrew. If you found this helpful, you'd help me out a lot by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell for notifications if you want to get notified when I make a new video. I'm coming out with these music theory breakdowns every Friday. I'm going to try to keep that going. I hope all this is helpful. Shoot me an email. Make music, have fun, enjoy the world, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.